My children put me in a nursing home. I will never forgive them. The final betrayal. The day my children put me in a nursing home, they told me it was for my own good. That's how these things always begin. With softness, with careful language, with concern that sounds like love. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't accuse me of anything. They didn't even pretend I had done something wrong. They simply said the word safe over and over again. You'll be safer here. You'll have help. You won't be alone. What they meant was this: you are no longer convenient. I remember sitting in the passenger seat while my oldest drove. I had lived in my house for 42 years. I knew the cracks in the driveway, the way the front door stuck in winter, the sound the pipes made when the temperature dropped. That house held my entire adult life. Birthdays, arguments, Christmas mornings, silent nights after everyone had gone to bed. It held my history. And I was leaving it with 2 suitcases. They had packed for me. That part still stings more than I like to admit. The fact that they went through my drawers, decided what mattered, chose what I would bring into the final chapter of my life. I wasn't consulted. I was informed. They kept saying, "It's just until we figure things out." That phrase is poison, because everyone knows what it means. I had fallen once, just once, slipped in the kitchen, bruised my hip. I didn't even break anything, but suddenly I became fragile in their eyes. Suddenly my independence was a liability. Suddenly the man who raised them was a risk to be managed. They said they were worried. I said I was fine. They said I didn't understand. I said I did. The truth is, we were having 2 different conversations. They were talking about logistics. I was talking about dignity. When we arrived, the building looked clean, neutral, carefully decorated to feel warm without actually being personal. There were flowers by the entrance and a woman at the front desk who spoke in a tone reserved for either children or the very old. I suppose I qualified as the latter. My daughter held my arm as we walked in. Not because I needed help, because she wanted to feel like she was helping. That's another thing about betrayal. It rarely feels like cruelty to the person committing it. It feels like responsibility, like sacrifice, like doing the hard thing. They kept telling me this was hard for them. I almost laughed. Hard for them. They went back to their houses that night, their beds, their routines, their lives. I stayed behind in a room that smelled faintly of disinfectant and someone else's history. The first night is the worst. You lie there listening to sounds you don't recognize, coughing down the hall, a television playing too loud in another room, wheels squeaking against tile. You realize quickly that this is not a temporary place. It's a waiting room for the end. No one says that out loud. They call it assisted living, long-term care, supportive housing. But we all know what it is. It's where people go when they stop being manageable at home. I keep replaying the conversations leading up to that day. Subtle at first. Questions about whether I was still driving, comments about the stairs, suggestions about downsizing. It was like watching a decision form in the background before anyone admitted it out loud. I thought I had more time. That's the cruel part. You don't get a vote in your own displacement. They said they couldn't check on me every day. They said they had work. They said they had children of their own. As if I hadn't once had work. As if I hadn't once had children to raise. As if exhaustion wasn't something I knew intimately. I didn't raise my children to feel burdened by me. I raised them to be independent, to live fully, to move forward without guilt. But I never imagined that independence would one day be used as justification for leaving me behind. They visit. Of course they visit. They bring flowers. They bring updates about their lives. They ask if I need anything. They sit in the chair across from me and speak with the careful patience of people who believe they are being generous with their time. I nod. I smile. I tell them I'm adjusting. But something inside me hardened that first night. and it hasn't softened since. It's not about the building. It's not about the room. It's about the choice. They chose convenience over proximity. They chose structure over presence. They chose safety over loyalty. And they expect me to understand. Maybe I do understand. That doesn't mean I forgive. In the next thread, I will tell you what it feels like to watch your own children slowly treat you like a project instead of a parent. And the moment I realized this wasn't temporary at all. The second week inside the nursing home is when the illusion disappears. The first week still carries denial. You tell yourself this is temporary. You tell yourself they just need time to adjust schedules. You tell yourself your children are overwhelmed, not abandoning you. You cling to language, words like transition, stabilize, reevaluate. You treat your own displacement like a logistics problem instead of what it really is. But by the second week, patterns begin to form. You notice how the staff refers to you collectively. They need lunch. They're ready for activities. You become part of a category, not your name, not your history, not the decades you lived before this building, just a room number, a chart, a schedule, and your children begin adjusting too. Their visits grow structured, efficient, contained. They no longer sit with you in silence the way they once did in your living room. There is no naturalness anymore. They check their watches more often. Their phones light up on the table between you. Conversations are condensed into highlights. They summarize their lives instead of sharing them. They tell you about school events, promotions, vacations, and then they say, "We should let you rest." Rest. I have never rested this much in my life. Rest is what you say when you don't know how to stay longer. I started noticing something else, the way they spoke to the staff about me. Not in front of me at first, but eventually in front of me too. Dad can get confused sometimes. He forgets small things. He doesn't always realize when he needs help. The sentences were gentle, concerned, protective. They were also inaccurate. Yes, I forget small things, names, dates, why I walked into a room. That happens at my age. But I still know who I am. I still know what this is. They began narrating me, as if I wasn't fully present. That's when I understood the deeper shift. I was no longer the authority in my own life. I was the subject of discussion. One afternoon, I overheard my youngest speaking to the administrator near the front desk. She thought I couldn't hear her. "We just want to make sure he's comfortable." Comfortable. I wanted to ask her when comfort became the highest goal of my existence. I don't need comfort. I need dignity. There's a difference. Comfort is temperature controlled, meals delivered, medication organized. Dignity is being asked before decisions are made. It's being consulted about your own future. It's having your resistance treated as perspective instead of confusion. I tried to talk to them about going home. They said the house wasn't safe. They said the stairs were dangerous. They said I needed supervision. Supervision. I raised them without supervision. I held jobs with responsibility. I carried mortgages, paid bills, solved crises. And now I require supervision. The word echoes in my head at night. There's a quiet humiliation in being treated as fragile when you don't feel fragile. Yes, my body is slower. Yes, I tire more easily. But my mind is still sharp enough to understand what has happened. They have decided this is where I belong. The moment I realized this wasn't temporary came during a visit in the third week. My daughter brought paperwork. She tried to frame it casually. "We just need to sort some things out in case of emergencies. Power of attorney, medical directives, financial access." I read every line, slowly, carefully. She grew impatient as I took my time. "I just want to make sure everything's in order." Order. I signed nothing that day. Not because I wanted to make it difficult, because I wanted them to see that I was still here, still capable of choosing. They left early that afternoon. The room felt smaller after they were gone. That's when anger replaced disbelief. not explosive anger. Quiet, concentrated anger. The kind that builds when you realize the people you sacrificed for are now optimizing you. They tell themselves this is love. They tell themselves this is responsibility. They tell themselves they are doing what I would have done for them. But that's not true. When they were small and inconvenient, I didn't relocate them. When they were difficult, I didn't outsource them. When they were fragile, I stayed. I stayed through sleepless nights, through exhaustion, through phases that lasted years. And now, in my most vulnerable chapter, I have been streamlined. I watch other residents in this building. Some don't know where they are. Some don't remember their children's names. Some sit staring at windows as if waiting for something that will never arrive. I am not them. Not yet. And maybe that's what makes this harder. I am aware that my independence was negotiated without me, aware that my children believe they made the responsible choice, aware that if I protest too strongly, it will be interpreted as decline. So I choose my words carefully. But inside, something has broken. In the final thread, I will tell you about the moment that sealed it for me. The conversation that confirmed this was not temporary, not transitional, but permanent. The moment that sealed it for me didn't happen in this room. It happened in my old house. They took me back one afternoon to pick up a few more things. That's how they framed it. A small errand, a quick visit. I remember feeling a flicker of relief as we pulled into the driveway. The lawn was trimmed. The curtains were different. I didn't comment on that at first. When I stepped inside, the air felt wrong. Not because of dust, because of absence. The walls were bare in places where pictures had hung for decades. The living room was rearranged. My chair, the one I'd sat in every evening, was gone. I turned slowly. My daughter avoided my eyes. My son spoke first. We thought it might be better to start getting things ready. Ready, that word again. They had already listed the house, the place where I had raised them, the place where their height was marked in pencil inside a closet door, the place where their mother and I had argued and reconciled and lived ordinary days that felt eternal at the time. They didn't ask me if I was ready. They told me the market was good. They told me it would be easier to sell now. They told me maintaining it didn't make sense. Nothing about it made sense emotionally. Everything about it made sense financially. That's when the final layer of illusion peeled away. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't a pause. This was replacement. My house would hold someone else's life soon. My room in the nursing home would hold mine. Condensed, managed, contained. I walked slowly through each space one last time. I ran my hand along the kitchen counter where I had leaned countless times. I stood in the hallway and remembered Christmas mornings. I opened the back door and looked at the yard I once mowed every Saturday without fail. I didn't cry. I think something in me had already solidified. On the drive back, no one spoke. They thought I was processing. I was concluding. That night, lying in that narrow bed again, I understood something that took me weeks to admit. This was not just about safety, it was about control. They were afraid of responsibility, afraid of emergencies, afraid of inconvenience, afraid of watching me decline up close. So they created distance, structured distance, sanitized distance. They outsourced the final chapter of my life to professionals so they could remain the loving children without carrying the daily weight. And perhaps in their minds, that makes sense. But here is the truth they will never say out loud. It is easier to love someone when you don't have to live with their fragility. I do not believe they hate me. I believe they prioritize their lives, and I cannot forgive that, not because I expect martyrdom, but because love, when it becomes inconvenient, reveals itself. I gave them my youth, my energy, my patience, my presence. I did not measure the cost. I did not calculate the return. I did not optimize. And at the end, I became something to be managed. They still visit. They still bring flowers. They still tell me they love me. And I believe they do. But love without proximity feels different. It feels diluted. I sit here now surrounded by people whose stories ended quietly like this. Some have made peace with it. Some have forgotten enough to stop caring. I remember everything. That may be my curse, or my clarity. Perhaps one day I will soften. Perhaps one day I will understand that they did what they thought was right. But understanding is not the same as forgiveness. And some betrayals are not loud. They are administrative. My children put me in a nursing home. They call it care. I call it the final decision made without me. And that is something I will carry for the rest of my days.